This is Real Housewives of the Kingdom, a sweet space where you'll hear from the hearts of fellow housewives in the kingdom of God. Some just like you and some really different in various walks of life. We will talk about how God is walking with us through the good and the hard. I pray you'll be encouraged and entertained as we laugh and sometimes cry together. Most of all, I hope it reminds you we're in this together and you are not alone. Welcome everyone and Merry Christmas. Today, my guest is my sweet Momma Shawn Baker. On today's episode, we are discussing Christmas traditions through generations, from my mom's childhood to mine, and how we have adapted traditions throughout the years with siblings, spouses, nieces and nephews, grandkids, in-laws, friends, and family. Our chat will include some sweet memories of my grandma who loved Christmas and Jesus the most and started a sweet legacy of faith, grace, and love, and family that continues today. And well, I literally can't think of Christmas without thinking of her. We share some funny memories that you may just relate to. My mom gives some great tips on slowing down and enjoying the season. How we can look through the lens of love so you can honor God and cultivate sweet time with friends and family, not just surviving, but thriving. We do discuss Santa Claus, and if you have little ears listening, we wouldn't want to give away any of his Christmas secrets, so you may want to pop in your headphones or listen a different time. I hope this episode encourages you and enriches your Christmas season. Hello everybody, I want to welcome you to second to the last episode of Real Housewives of the Kingdom. Today, I have my sweet mama here as a guest. So she's the person who has known me on this earth the longest, yep. Officially. And I am just excited to have her here. I could say a lot of things about introducing her, but I want her to introduce herself.
Well, I'm Shawn Baker. I've been married 39 years. I have 4 beautiful children, Caroline, and I'm so proud of her doing this podcast and just being a light for Jesus. I have Savannah. She's married to Josh, and they have 6 children. And then I have Victoria. She's married to Bobby, and they have 1. And then I have Dakota, my boy, and he's not married yet.
But we're praying for that.
But we're praying. He's single and beautiful.
If you're out there, I have a really amazing brother who loves Jesus. And if he hears this, he's going to die.
He's going to be so mad.
But we're praying for you wherever you are. If you hear this.
Exactly. So I've been a medical masseuse for 25 years. I've instructed and worked as a massage therapist. I owned a spa just recently. I retired from that. Still do a little bit on the side. I homeschooled all 4 of my children all the way through, so a total of 25 years.
Mm-hmm. And no, we're not weird. People always think we're like, are you weird because you're like, oh, you were homeschooled? Except for now, actually, it's so funny because when I was growing up, homeschooling was
you
like,
stayed in the house till 3 because you didn't want anybody to know.
Yeah, and people at church even would be like, oh, you're homeschooled? I'm sorry. And it's like, no, I loved it. And so now after COVID, I feel like it's a lot.
It's a really, it's a big thing now. Yeah. And I started co-ops, I started field trip organizations, play groups. When I felt the Lord call me to homeschooling, I felt like I would make it fun. And I think we did make it fun. We did.
It's awesome. I loved homeschooling all the way through. I went to preschool, but that was it.
Yeah.
And so right now, if you're watching the video, we are sitting in my mom's kitchen. We are just, a couple weeks away from Christmas, and that is very exciting.
Fun time.
Yeah. It's one of our favorite seasons. My love for Jesus came from learning who he was from my parents, and they never forced me to believe, but they just introduced me to who he was and allowed the Holy Spirit to work in my life and show me who he was. And so it's my choice to be a Christian, but it's because my parents introduced me to Jesus. And that is like one of the most special things to me about my growing up is that was the most important thing in our home. And that also came from my grandma, who did the same thing for my mom. And my grandma has been with Jesus for 27 years. I was 11 when she went to be with Jesus. But I feel like I got some very full years with her. I feel like my 11 years with her were even more full than, tripled. And I feel like the Lord did that for me, which is incredible. And so today, that leads me to our subject today. which is Christmas traditions. And me and my mom are just going to kind of chat about what her life was like growing up at Christmas, what we did once her and my dad got married, and what they did with traditions and I'll discuss a little bit of what me and Kev do, and we'll kind of talk about now what that looks like with our extended family of nieces, nephews, and kind of how it has grown and changed. And it's important because God gave us this beautiful family and we love to cultivate it. So,
Yes.
And that is part of my heart for women and for this podcast. You know, even though my grandma has been not with us for some time, she really influences everything that we do. I mean, there's not I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think about her.
Yeah, same here.
And it's cool. I was named after her. So my name is Caroline and her name was Caroline. And that is really cool. And
that was a sweet gift I gave you.
Thank you. I love it. And it was cool too because a little time ago, my uncle was doing some work on our family heritage stuff and he found the passage that she took. So she came through Ellis Island. Her mom came through Ellis Island. So my great grandma came through Ellis Island into New York and from Germany. And when he found paperwork, we found out that her mother was named Caroline. So it was really cool because she named her daughter after her mother, and then my mom named me after her mother. So it's not like a name that was every single person was named it, but it is sort of a little bit of a family name, which is cool, and I love being named after Grandma.
Yes.
So thank you, Mom, for naming me after Grandma. And I love when people tell me I look like her too, because that's
Me
like
too.
when people are like, "You remind me of Grandma," I'm like, thank you. That is the best compliment you could ever give me. So I want to start with what was Christmas like for you as a kid? So my mom has 4 siblings. And so I have, and I don't know if I've said this she just named off my siblings. So, I grew up in a family of 4. She grew up in a family of 5. So why don't you talk about what was Christmas like growing up and that sort of a thing in your home?
So I was the baby of 5.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably looked different for each of my siblings. But for me, I was babied by my 4 older siblings. So Christmas was always magic. My uncle would come into town Uncle Davey would come and we would go for a ride to look at the Christmas lights. And then I would come in the door and Santa's bells would ring. We always did Christmas on Christmas Eve because of the European. And the bells would ring and I would be running in the door like I just missed him, and there would be all the presents under the tree. The other thing my mom did is she did a big, huge village. It started out kind of maybe with 10 to 15 houses. The year she died, there was probably 700 houses and railroads, and
she made the houses.
She made the house. In the beginning, she did it. In the beginning, she had all the village from her mother. As those houses broke and disintegrated, she made them. So I just thought of something. So one year, she had been making the houses all through the year, putting them away. We always put it up in the parlor, which was the front. They had I grew up in a big Victorian home in Redlands. And so we were so excited. It took us like 5 hours to put the village up, the lights, the cotton, the houses, the people, the everything. And we turned on the lights, and there in the village was tampons and all the boxes she used, the lights came through, and like probably half the houses she did smoke, and so there were like
cigarettes,
Benson and Hedges, and we just started laughing. So we quick got some snow, and all those roofs ended up having
snow on them.
I'll never forget that. That was pretty funny. I was probably about 14 at the time.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
So yeah, so I kind of grew up as my siblings got married and we're leaving the house. So Christmas was always evolving, changing. We always did Christmas Eve at my mom's house, and that was pretty standard. Like any other holiday, it was whatever, but Christmas Eve was always when everybody came back to my mom's house. We always had a lot of food. My mom did not know a stranger, so anybody that was going to be alone on Christmas, she would invite. My dad was disabled from the war. He was the commander of the DAV, Disabled American Veterans. So we probably had 4 or 5 veterans every Christmas, Thanksgiving. She never wanted anybody to be alone. I remember Merlin was always do you remember Merlin?
I remember Merlin.
He was always there.
He had one leg that was shorter than the other, and so he always wore the shoe that was bigger on the one side. And he was very jolly and magical to me when I think about him.
He was a kind, quiet man. Yeah, very much so. So he was at I don't remember an occasion he was not at because he had no family. So my dad helped him with his disability from the war. His leg was shot. Anyways.
I don't think I knew. I think in my mind, any of those people that were always there to me were like family. Like I didn't really, especially if they were always there, you know, it didn't really occur to me that they weren't family.
So Christmas was always sweet. It was always fun. I don't know that it was ever extremely expensive. Like my mom,
like the latest and the greatest.
Shopping. Yeah, we went shopping all through the year and she would pick up little things.
Now, did you guys, so I know traditionally now with current culture, I mean, gosh, we put up Christmas tree, like some people put it up before Halloween these days. But did you always put up the Christmas tree at the beginning of December?
No, when I was little, the Christmas tree went up like Christmas Eve sometimes. When my Uncle Dave took us out was when the Christmas tree went up. So that was kind of a European tradition. But as time went on and things changed, I remember one year my brother Scott was in the service and he was away. He was deployed. And my mom kept the tree up till May so he could see the tree it was always on the window seat in the parlor in the village because she wanted him to have a Christmas. After that, as years went on and I became a helper to put the tree up, I would say we started around the beginning of December. Sometimes we would do it on Thanksgiving. You know, it just depends.
Because I think by the time I was around, I feel like all of December was Christmas at Grandma's. And that was so magical.
And our whole house, every bathroom, kitchen, every bedroom, living room was decorated. And a lot of cotton with houses and lights. Cotton everywhere. Yeah. And she loved Santas. And she always had Jesus. I mean, there was no doubt that Jesus was the reason for the season. In fact, she had a huge sign that she put on her house every year that said Jesus is the reason
for the season.
For the season.
I'm going to post that with this episode so that people can see it. But on Instagram, when I post about it on Instagram, I'm going to use that photo.
So I'm almost 60. So I would just say the traditions changed, being the last, then having my family and bringing them over. So
right. And you were youngest, so really a lot of your Christmases, like you said, were probably even like siblings coming back home and that sort of thing.
I'm closer in age to two of my nieces and nephew than I am to some of my siblings. They were almost more like siblings than...
Right. And that was kind of magical for you to be able to have them there. So we have already said how much my grandma loved Jesus, but I kind of would love you to talk about when she became really sold out for Jesus. You were really little,
probably
right?
About 5 or 6.
Yeah. And would you say she believed in God before, but she just became...
I think she got baptized in the river. That was kind of magical to me always. You got baptized in a river. So she was always a Christian, but somewhere in that elementary school age, she really decided to make God the center of her life. And
that was right during the beginning kind of the Jesus movement.
Yeah, she got spirit filled, and I'd go with her to coffee shops. There'd be hippies. We'd go to the beach. We'd go, and she would just witness to everybody and anybody who would listen. She'd have her go-go boots and mini skirts on, or her leather.
My grandma was her fashion was always, she'd have moccasins, and like my mom said, even when I was a kid, she'd buy a t-shirt, but she would cut it up and put beads all over it. And she always loved fashion.
And me, I'm a jeans t-shirt kind of girl.
I mean, if you're watching this though, I don't know if you can see, but my mom has feathers in her hair. So my mom and me both got a little bit of that,
spice.
Of that grandma pizzazz. But I feel like that kind of embodies everything about her zeal for life and Jesus, and everything was just always at that level.
When I was fairly young, maybe 11, she got very, very ill, and they gave her a month to live. So she asked the Lord for her to live till I was 16 because she felt like leaving me at 11 would be too young. At that point, I don't know how you can say it, but her Christianity went full gear. I don't remember the Bible not in her lap, whether we were by the pool, whether we were in the house, wherever we were. Her Bible was always open, and she was studying and sharing and things like that.
And she was very real about it. She wasn't pushy or inauthentic. She just lived
people.
it, and she loved people.
She loved them well.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mhm.
So one really cool thing, you always said she had a Bible in her lap, and I always remember her Bible. If I wasn't in her lap, her Bible was, and if I was in her lap, her Bible was on her table next to her, and she had multiple Bibles, but there was one that my uncle Scott got from her when she went to be with Jesus, and there was several years back. I got that Bible in the mail along with letters from each of my cousins. And my uncle had started this thing, gave it to my oldest cousin. He kept her Bible for a year and wrote the next cousin a letter. And she wrote the next cousin a letter, who was her sister. She wrote our next cousin the letter. And by the time I got it, and like my mom said, her kids were the youngest. So I was the oldest of the youngest. And by the time I got it, I have all these letters from my cousins about what their year was like with Grandma's Bible. And it was really incredible. And I, the very OCD and whatever person that I am, I took notes on every page because she had notes on all of the pages. And one of the things she wrote was, to truly win souls for Christ, we must feel the anguish of their souls. And that was such a cool thing to me because I really think she did, and people felt that. When she went to be with Jesus, she went to be with Jesus on her birthday, and that was right at Christmas time. So we had the funeral and all these things all around Christmas. We were all together. So that Christmas Eve was obviously a very different Christmas Eve at her house. But it was so cool because at her funeral, there were so many people at her funeral and so many doctors and nurses. And like my mom had said, she was sick when my mom was young. My grandma had...
she ended up dying when I was 31. So
right.
She did live past 15. God doubled it.
Yeah. But she had rheumatic fever when she was little. And so that kind of weakened her heart. And then she did smoke. Her valves. And then she was a smoker. I mean, she grew up in that era of people who smoked. And, so she had some health issues throughout her life, but it was so cool because God really used her in the hospital, and the funeral was full of doctors and nurses that she had led to the Lord. And
3 restaurants closed the day of her funeral because she led waitresses and restaurant managers. And she would just go love them and tell them about Jesus. The people who took her blood every week, she led to the Lord.
And I just remember being at, the funeral and just hearing so many people, they couldn't wait to share how Grandma had changed their life and led them to Jesus. And so that's what I grew up seeing. I saw my grandma, I saw my mom and dad, who both loved Jesus, and love people in Jesus real. And that's so important because, people need to really feel that authentic love, because that's what draws us to God's heart. It's his kindness that leads us to repentance. Exactly.
I would say too, my dad did love Jesus before he died. It was pretty amazing, the gift God gave us. But he was very quiet about it, but he let my mom go. We went to Catherine Kuhlman. I mean, we went everywhere to all these meetings, all these evangelists. We drove all over the place, and she always toted me with her because I was her little buddy.
And she listened to, it's so funny, I think about podcasting is a little bit of the medium that, even like radio preaching or like preachers that had so she would listen to, I remember like Corrie ten Boom and Johnny Erickson Tata, and she'd watch the 700 Club.
Yep. We went and saw Johnny many times and saw Corrie ten Boom a few times. I mean,
it's so cool.
Heroes of the faith, definitely.
Yeah. People who really are living out their faith and not just popular by today's standards. There's so, now with social media, there's so much popularity and, within the church. And so it's so cool that to have been exposed to all of that. And all of that was part of her heart during Christmas. And I think one of the things that I love, like you said, she loved Santa. She loved all of that, the magic of Christmas. And I think that really affected, obviously how you approached Christmas,
Right.
and then now how I approach Christmas. And, I'm
Love all
very,
things magical.
yeah. And I think that celebrating Christmas celebrates the life that Jesus came to save. And so to me, all of these things are important.
Mhm.
And it lets people feel loved and helps us to be connected.
Well, I remember when I had you guys, I found that book, Santa, Are You Real? And it's the story of St. Nicholas. And
Yes.
it just ties in how he would have been sad if we forgot about Jesus.
Mhm.
But he loved people well.
Mhm.
And that's why we remember and give gifts, because of what he did. And so that one of our traditions was reading that book every Christmas. And that helped me kind of.
Well, and that's what, and I remember you wouldn't read that book to us until we asked, until we truly asked. So getting into our traditions a little bit. So by the time I came, part of our tradition for our family personally at home, my mom and dad always did the Santa thing. We left out carrots and cookies, carrots for the reindeer, cookies for Santa. And it was always magical. But I also was, taught about Jesus and why we celebrate Christmas and why we give gifts, because he gave the best gift. But we enjoyed all of it. And then when we were old enough where we started to question, is this really real? My mom would read us this book, and it was so sweet the way that it
was a sweet transition.
It didn't make you feel like everything I've ever believed is a lie, and it didn't also make you feel sad. It made you feel like, oh, this is so cool to carry on this tradition.
Yeah, and a gift God gave us to share.
And I can remember saying, like when you read it to me, I think I was like 7 or 8. Savannah was like 2. So I can remember you saying, okay, so Savannah doesn't know yet. And so you're going to now help me make it magical for her. And I remember that was so exciting to me. And that carried all the way through. My youngest brother my
only brother. I have 3 brothers.
I have 2 brother-in-laws, but, 3 if you count Glenn on Kevin's side. Yeah. But in our family, I have 2 brother-in-laws now, but all my siblings are younger than me. So my sister Savannah is 5 years younger than me. My sister Victoria is 8 years younger than me, and my brother Dakota is 11 years younger than me. So by the time Dakota was, understanding Santa and all of that, I was already with my husband. And so we were dating, and we got married when he was 7, and he wasn't quite asking yet. I remember those first couple Christmases that I was married, still carrying on that tradition. And it was just so sweet to be part of all of that. I love that. And then part of our other tradition, so we would do, like my mom said, Christmas Eve was at Grandma's. Always, always, always. Now, sometimes I know I did a couple plays at church. Yeah. I feel like
the whole family would go to the play, and then we'd go to Grandma's.
Right. Yeah. And so we would.
Aunts and uncles, everybody went to the play. To watch.
And then, and like we said, my grandma's house was this big Victorian house. It was magical Christmas and everyone around, and just very, very sweet. So that was part of it. Usually sometime on Christmas Day, we went over to my grandma and grandpa Baker's house to visit them and see that side of the family for a couple of hours.
And do a little gift exchange with those cousins.
But our personal family traditions, like you already mentioned, Santa, Are You For Real? Just talk about some of the other things you did. And I know from my perspective, but from your perspective.
So every year I would buy a new book. I have a list if people are curious. Carolyn can add it. Some were just fun. Some were very biblically based. And we would do, every evening we would read a book. And we'd draw together. And if my brother was over, he'd read the book, or if one of my uncles were over, they would. We kind of drew people into our family tradition, and that was really sweet. Another tradition was that we took from Thanksgiving all the way to January off. So we would bake. We went to the convalescent homes a lot, and we went to neighbor's house and brought baked goods. We made ornaments. Side note on that, my mom was a crafter, and we would always craft
Hence
together.
the tampon box
Exactly.
houses.
So we would always do crafts. Like she would always find pom-poms, felt ornaments. We did these balls that you put wax on and you use Christmas cards. Anyways, we always did crafts. My mom and I did. And so once I had Dakota, that was the year my mom passed away. So I then got a ton of her ornaments. And in those ornaments were the ones I made. And I looked at I thought I did a really good job, but I did not do a good job. Here's her perfectly polished ornament, and here's mine. It's so cloudy you can't even see the card, but she left it. She didn't go back in and correct it. And that was a good lesson to me. Her little angels were perfect. Mine were not. Her little wood decoupage, mine had globs everywhere, and I cut the wooden soldier's leg off, but she left them. And that was a good message to me. So when we crafted, and this is something I would share with people, just let your kids do what they do. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like for me, that was so much love that she did not feel like she had to change it to be perfect like hers. I would probably guess mine aren't perfect yet because I'm not a crafter. But so we had fun. We made all kinds of ornaments through, like every year it was a different ornament for the tree. And we went and picked our Christmas tree out at a live Christmas tree farm.
Rode in the back of the pickup truck to get it before you had to wear seatbelts, before there was like laws.
Yeah. And we had, like, I threw Christmas parties. We had friends over. Oh, I wouldn't say every night, but I would say
all the time.
Most nights we would have Christmas
Well, and
dinners.
and we would go caroling. We would go, there
parades. They were in parades. The kids were always in parades.
Whether it was with Awanas or me and my siblings were in a homeschool marching band called the Patriots. And so we did, as I got a little bit older, we did, or for me, older, my siblings were still pretty little when they were doing the parades. But we did parades in different cities, Christmas parades all around, and that was always so fun.
Disneyland was always a staple at Christmas.
Yep.
It was always magical and decorated, and just taking drives out to Chino to
go
the
look at the lights.
Yeah. So we went Christmas caroling. There's a candy shop in
Rialto?
No, Ontario. Logan's Candy Store.
Yeah.
And they would do a little demonstration on
I'll
the candy
link
cane.
Logan's Candy Store in the notes.
And I think you might have to have a reservation now because it's so popular. But they make the candy cane, and then they tell the story of why there's 3 stripes, and I think it's 3. And and why the white is the purity of Jesus, and the red of the candy cane, and the crook is the shepherds that first went to see Jesus. Anyways, they tell it really well. So we did that every year. We'd go visit Logan's, and I don't know.
Well, and we would always do, so one thing that sticks out to me too that we did that was different. So, first of all, on Christmas morning, we would wake up. So we'd be at grandma's at night on Christmas Eve and then come home. And that was cool too, because I think even though we loved my grandparents, I loved that we also made our own family traditions with just our family, that there was also time with just us. And I think that was really important. And I think sometimes in the holidays, you can get caught up with trying to please everybody, and people want to be around. Oh, I want to see the kids open up their presents.
Right.
And it's like, I think that it was really important that you and Dad you put up a boundary of, no, Christmas morning is us.
Right.
Christmas
they
morning
always
is our
had
family.
matching jammies on their beds on Christmas Eve, so they'd come home.
Yeah.
And we actually carry that tradition on. We have lots of,
all the
every
way
Christmas,
through.
all my children, grandchildren, even my son-in-laws that I love. And we love it. It's fun all being together on Christmas morning and all matching. There's just something special about that.
And so we would wake up and read the Christmas story out of the Bible. every single year. And we'd have breakfast, and it was always cinnamon rolls. Just your Pillsbury out of the can cinnamon rolls. But it's magical to me. I love those. And we still to this day do, when we're all together for Christmas, when we celebrate, we do those cinnamon rolls because and we've added some more traditions, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Usually fruit, but and something protein.
Usually like bacon and eggs
Bacon
too.
and eggs.
Yeah. And the other thing we would do, which I think is pretty different and which I realized was really different than most people do, is we open presents very slowly. So I think a lot of people, their kids run out and start ripping open the presents. And from the most part, for as long as I can remember, we start with the youngest kid passes out presents to everybody that they got presents for. And then we all sit and watch everybody open them. And then the next person passes out, and then the next person passes out, and we don't
might
all
stop for food, and then
and then we continue to go through until we get to mom and dad's presents. And even then, we stop. We watch each person open their gift. We talk about it. We're grateful, and I think that was really important in making us understand how special and sweet gifts are. And it's kind of cool to have watched that tradition go. And we'll even get into this more, but last Christmas we were in Tennessee with my sister and her family. All of us were together, and even her kids were doing that. Her kids were passing out their presents to each other, and it was so cool to see them carrying on that tradition. And I think that really, now when I see movies or if I'm somewhere where people are like opening gifts, I'm like kind of caught off guard because I'm like, you don't sit and enjoy and watch everybody open their gifts slowly throughout the morning?
I think it was just you and Savannah were alive, and we had a Christmas like that. And when you're buying gifts, just out of love, you're like, oh, that looks like Caroline. That looks like Savannah. That looks like Tori. You just like keep buying and keep buying. And then all of a sudden, everybody opens everything. Nobody knows where anything was from. So I just had really started praying about it. And we were a single income family, and we didn't have a lot of money. We were buying a house, and we just didn't have a lot of money. I mean, we had enough. Obviously, we owned a house, and we bought a bigger house, and then a bigger house.
I never felt like we lacked anything, and I always felt like I got fun stuff. I mean, every once in a while, it was like, I can remember like the year we got Nintendo. A friend of mine got Super Nintendo,
right?
But I was excited to get Nintendo because I thought that was super amazing that we could have that,
So I would take each of you, at that time it was Walmart, and I would just take one of you, and you could pick out the presents for your siblings, and we'd put it on layaway. Then I'd take the other one. So then I had like 4 layaways, and then Walmart was really the only store around that time that you, also that you could really buy toys. I guess you could, sometimes we went to Toys R Us, but that was in San Bernardino, which was kind of far away. So so we would just do that, and I would say make your Christmas list, but be careful because you might only get 5 gifts, so you want to make sure you put things you would love and not just random
stuff.
So they would go shopping with their list, and they got to pick out what they wanted every single time. The kids were more excited to give what they picked out for their sibling or for
than they were to even open their own.
They were just so excited.
And that's today. That's the same today. Like, we can't help but be so excited to give a gift.
And that's what I wanted to cultivate in our family. So we did that, and we still do it.
And it worked.
It takes all day long, but it's beautiful. And we had many years. Caroline's husband Kevin's family was there, and sometimes we did things with Savannah's husband Josh and
their family.
We just always included
anyone,
family.
Kind of like grandma. Anyone who, and Kevin said, so when we got married, Kevin told his parents, he said, he goes, I'm not doing 2 Christmases, so you better come over and get along with the Bakers. And they were fine. They loved coming over. And then, of course,
so they kind of became almost, I don't want to say grandparents because I don't think they're old enough to be the grandparents, but like an aunt and uncle to my kids. Like my kids developed a closer relationship with them because They
Yes.
were part of all of our
Mhm.
festivities. And we always had people living here, like people who needed a home. I don't know, until Dad's accident, I don't think there was ever a time that somebody wasn't with the girls, with,
Right.
you had friends who needed
But I think
homes.
before I got married, Christmas morning was always just our family.
Yeah.
So as soon as we got married, though, that following Christmas, Kevin's parents came and
Mhm.
Kevin's brother came,
Right.
and then we were all together. So
It's funny because even like Dakota, when he was little, he bought Caroline jewelry, but he
Mhm.
said Sven and Tori weren't old enough to appreciate jewelry yet. So
yeah,
the
he
first
would always
Christmas-
say he was so little. Even this is before I got married. Even.
Yeah.
He would buy me jewelry. He'd always pick me up jewelry, and then the girls would go, "How come we don't get jewelry?" And he'd say, "You guys aren't old enough."
I remember the first Christmas that he bought them jewelry. They were like, "We are old enough for jewelry,"
And I feel like they were already women by
Yeah.
the time he did it, and it was so funny because he's like, "No, you guys aren't old enough."
But he had so much fun picking out your
It
favorite
was
color.
so sweet.
Yeah.
I still have those pieces
Mhm.
because we can't get rid of them.
Yes.
One's little Coda.
I remember. Yeah.
It's not so little anymore. And now, when you and Dad got married, how did his family's traditions play in with work?
Christmas Day,
Mhm.
we always went to his mom's, and his mom would make a big roast
Mhm.
and meal, and that was always kind of. I never really remember my mom cooking. I don't know,
Right.
because she was sick, so she never cooked
My mom literally went out to eat with her parents.
every single day of my life.
Yeah.
Which
Every
made me
meal.
a very picky eater. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
But she would make a roast, and I remember her carrots were great. I found out now it's because she put sugar in them.
Brown sugar carrots. I know. They're
I was like,
awesome.
why are
I
these
still-
carrots so good? And she'd make mashed potatoes and gravy,
Yeah.
and it just tasted different because it was homemade, and I'd never
Yeah.
had, because I'd never ordered that at a restaurant. I'd order a hamburger or a grilled cheese.
Well, and I think it sounds like, from what your older siblings say, that Grandma cooked before she got sick.
Yeah.
And that Grandpa just said, "You know what? I just don't want you to put any extra effort in because you're
Mhm.
battling a lot of stuff." So
yeah,
it was
so
definitely a different.
they would even go out on Christmas. Now, Christmas Eve, everybody brought like potluck to my parents'
Right.
house. But Christmas morning at our we would spend Christmas morning together, but afternoon we'd go over to my in-laws, and they had a table. I'll never forget. They had a mirror at the end, and they all would talk to each other in the mirror.
This is where I get it. If you are ever
If you ever
with
see
me and there's a
Caroline, she
mirror,
got it from.
I always talk
the
to myself
Bakers.
in the mirror and look at myself in the
So
mirror.
yeah, so we
It's
would
terrible.
just sit around the table and just
Yeah.
kind of do.
And
it wasn't
Grandma-
quite as traditional as my parents, but
Right, and Grandma Baker decorated for Christmas, but different than Grandma Eels. So she had a little glass tree with the little lights that you
Mhm.
it's like the 1950s classic. You've probably seen them before in old movies, but that's what she had, and I remember putting it up with her.
yeah,
You know,
I think I have a picture of you putting. it up
yeah,
with her.
and she would always put it on the little table that sat between her and my grandpa's chairs. And, and it was different, and I could see that they were different, but they were both celebrating Christmas. And all of my grandparents loved Jesus. So that was something that was always part of. Oh, and she always used to change out the painting
That's
above.
right.
So my dad's mom, my Grandma Baker, was a painter. And she had paintings in her house that she did. And she did one of Mary and Joseph
On a donkey.
on a donkey,
Yeah.
and she had a little light above it. It was displayed. So
It was big too. It
Yeah,
wasn't a little,
huge,
it was
over the
huge.
fireplace, huge. And so realistically, every home that I spent Christmas and Christmas traditions in when I was growing up surrounded around Jesus. But
Mhm.
we also did fun Christmassy things too.
Yeah, I was pretty young when I got married. I turned 20 the next month after I was married. So I took on some of, like, I always will change of the pictures out. I think probably because Grandma
Mhm.
Baker did that. But
Yeah.
I also over decorate. I probably have 30 Christmas pins because I decorate every room
Yeah.
like my mom. So I kind of took a little of both of them.
Yeah. And, and then I do the same. I mean, I decorate for Christmas. When I married Kev, we moved into a house that was where his grandparents had lived. And when he graduated high school, he moved down to LA and moved in with his grandpa. His grandma had passed. And So he moved in with his grandpa because he was auditioning and working at Disneyland. Who's auditioning as an actor in Hollywood, very fancy. And so he was living with his grandpa in Pasadena, and his grandparents had traditions too. And it was interesting because by the time we got married, his grandpa had passed, but he still lived in the home that his grandparents had. And so it was the same paintings on the wall, the same furniture. And I remember when we went to go decorate for Christmas, our first Christmas, he pulled out his grandparents' decorations, and I was like, "Oh, this is cute." And I went to go put it somewhere like on a table that I thought would be cute. He goes, "No, no, no, this one goes over here. It goes right here." And and see this little nail right here? This hangs here. And he knew exactly where his grandparents' stuff went, specifically how they had said it. And it was so sweet. I mean, I wasn't offended at all. It was like, honestly, it just made me like love him more. I was like, oh, because I love the tradition of my grandma, and I'm like, I understand. If I was living in my grandma's house right now, I probably wouldn't move where she put stuff. So now it's really cool because in our home that we live in now, when we set up for Christmas, I have stuff that I have from my grandparents. Kevin has stuff from his grandparents. I have stuff my mom's given me over the years, and we have our stuff that we have cultivated together. And so it's really, really sweet to have all of those things. And we have now our places where we put stuff and that sort of a thing. So I just love that. And another thing we do also is Christmas movies.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we do Christmas movies.
Yeah. Nutcracker. Growing up, we watched Nutcracker every year, and going to Grandma and Grandpa's house, in my mind, I mean, Grandpa was Drosselmeyer and I was Clara, and I'd bring my Nutcracker with me, and I would dream that he was going to come alive. I'd put him next to my bed at night, and I would be like, please become a prince tonight. Please become a prince tonight. So I've always had a very, I love imagination and magic, and that is
pretend friends growing up. And
Yep, I did. And so, so that is just something too, but not just Nutcracker. So we, traditionally watch.
We watched all the cartoons like Frosty,
right, and Rudolph, and
and we watched the Grinch.
Yeah, Christmas at Plum Creek. For Little House on the Prairie. Yep.
But
I mean, Elf came out after I was married, but we incorporated
new ones.
Yeah, exactly. So now we've talked about kind of like what it was like when you were growing up, kind of how you put that into us. And then things start to change when your siblings start getting married. Now, when me and Kev first got married, it was really easy because all the kids were still little, and it was so easy to just come over and everybody was right here. As my sister Savannah got married, and then my sister Tori got married, now they have multiple families to celebrate with, and then they start having kids. So now once the kids start coming, now they're wanting to celebrate their traditions in their homes and create new traditions. And so we've sort of had to
flex and flow.
Yes. And that was, and I always think about, I think it was, like you said, Christmas Eve was always at Grandma's, but Thanksgiving was always a roving holiday, because it was whatever day closest to Thanksgiving on the weekend, everyone could get together.
Yeah, that's what my mom did.
Because the most important thing was to be together. And I think it's important because I think some people get so caught up on the actual date, when I think the most important thing is the getting together as a family and celebrating Jesus. So, and that is something that, and we've all kind of had to step into that. And it wasn't just because my siblings got married and had kids. Kev and I travel, and we've spent at least 4 Christmases in other countries, and we come home and then we celebrate Christmas in January, halfway through January. So, and I think about what you said about Grandma with Uncle Scott, or leaving up the Christmas tree. And I think, we've always just kind of held on to that concept that it doesn't matter if we celebrate it on the day, but it's just important that we celebrate it. And I love that.
I did get an artificial tree because of that.
Yeah.
It just because I put my tree up usually the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Well, I remember before Kevin and I went to Lebanon, we were going to be in Lebanon for Christmas for a show, but we weren't going to leave until like the 15th of December. And I was like, oh, but we were going to be gone for 2 weeks. So I said, oh, I want to put up Christmas before we go. And Kev goes, okay, but we have to get a fake tree because I don't want the tree to be like completely dead by the time we get back. So we bought a fake tree then at that point because I was like, well, I want it to be Christmassy now, so let's do it.
Yeah, we kind of have just traditions. We do keep the base of our traditions, but the day we celebrate, the time we celebrate it, it's ever changing.
And it's going to keep changing.
Yeah, my niece Monica likes to now have us over for
anyone who's in town on Christmas Eve.
Anybody who's town on Christmas Eve, she has them over, and she does a beautiful job, and we all really enjoy it. Dakota has been on staff with ministry, so
often he's working on Christmas Eve. Yeah,
so that's been hard. But we all go to church on Christmas Eve, and then he just comes over to Monica, so that worked. So yeah, we just sometimes it's the day after Christmas, sometimes it's a couple days before. For me, just being with my kids and my kids all being together is the most important. You know, and of course, celebrating Jesus, the reason for the season, that's through the whole month.
Yep, exactly.
Well, it's through the whole year. It's through your whole life.
It's through the whole year. And I'm going to go into, my next episode is going to go deeper into kind of why I really truly feel like it's important, even though some of the Christmas traditions that we celebrate seem sort of pagan, if you will, why I think that's really important still to do that.
Well, and as a young mom and growing up and wanting to do what pleased God, like there were times, no this, no that, yes this, no that, you know, well, no, we can't do that. Okay, well, it's not that big of a deal. We can tweak it to be something still special, but you know, as a parent, you want to do the very best job you can do, and
there's a lot of pressure for that.
There's a lot of pressure to do what's right. Just do what God's calling your heart. Love your kids, and
well, and like last year, last fall, fall of 2020. My sister, her husband, and their 5 kids, and my brother moved to Tennessee. And so we decided, you know what, let's all go out to Tennessee for Christmas. And so they live now in a beautiful little town just near a lake covered with trees, and it was magic. It snowed on Christmas Eve. It was 17 degrees on Christmas morning. My other sister and her husband and their son, they live, so she was pregnant with my nephew who was born in March. She was pregnant then with him. But they live in Southern California, but they own a cabin out there as well. So we all went out, and it was totally different than any Christmas we've ever had as a family. But it was so cool because we were all together and we did kind of a little bit different things. And, you know, we tried to go to Dollywood.
But Dollywood closed because of the ice and snow. We got all the way out there.
More ice and snow in the Smoky Mountains than like they've had on record.
30 years or something.
I think it was even more. It was like 100 years or something.
And that was everybody's gift, was a Dollywood pass.
Yeah, so my mom had bought those for us, and we got in my sister's big 15-passenger van, and literally all of us drove together. And
it was about 3 hours?
3 hours to get from where they live in Tennessee to where Dollywood is. And we got there and we drove up, and it's like, if you've ever seen the movie Vacation with Chevy Chase, you know, their whole family goes all the way across the country to get to an amusement park, and they drive up and it's closed. And there's just like one security guard. And that was literally our experience. We drove and we're like, oh, okay.
Well, I even called that morning when we left the house just to make sure, because it had snowed, and they were saying it was the most. They were like, nope, we're open. And then about 3/4 of the way I called and it said Dollywood is closed. And I was like, guys, the information's now saying it's closed.
Well, and of course you're going through the mountains in Tennessee, so it's like spotty reception. Yeah. But we just went with the flow, kind of like what we do every year with Christmas.
Pitch and Forge,
yeah. And we went and like
had a big yummy meal. And
yeah, and it was crazy because, you know, we could have let that really derail us, but we didn't because because we've already established that that's the most important thing in our family, the being together. And I think it's important to allow people in your family to have their Christmas traditions and not employ the guilt,
right.
Use guilt on them. I mean, I would just encourage anyone listening, if you have a sibling or a parent or whatever, and, you know, they tell you they're going to do something different for Christmas or they can't make it to something, don't give them a hard time. Let them.
I think that's one of the biggest gifts my mom gave me.
Yes.
Was they were alone probably almost every Thanksgiving I remember on Thanksgiving Day. And they just said, everybody go to your in-laws' houses and we'll celebrate on a different day. We don't want you having to try to eat 2 meals or, you know, we just want to enjoy. And I tried to do that. I hope I have done.
You have done that. And then in turn, I remember when Savannah and Josh had their oldest, our niece, that she told me, I think I want to be just with me and Josh and her for Christmas. You know, maybe we can do another day. And I remember her sounding like she was worried that I was going to be sad. And I said, no, sis, do it. That's your family. You have to make that a priority. You have to make you guys a priority. And don't give in to the stress of, if anybody is trying to say that's not okay, then they're not respecting your boundaries. And because I know how much I appreciated that growing up, and I wanted that for my niece too. I wanted her to have that sweet family time.
Right.
Now, of course, when we were all in Tennessee, we were all together.
Exactly. Well, they've everything evolves. Like, you just don't hold on to anything too tight. Now, well, not now because they're in Tennessee, but before they moved, in the afternoon, 2, 3-ish, she would invite any aunts, uncles, grandparents over.
Who wanted to come.
We'd do hot dogs or hamburgers or whatever.
Right.
Something easy on the barbecue. And we would see the kids with their toys and spend the evening together. Right. And that kind of became a tradition later.
Right. And even this year said they're going to Tennessee. Kevin and I are still undecided. I know we're cutting it close. But we're still undecided what's going on for us, just because we don't know what's going on in our lives right now. And my sister, Tori, and her husband, Bobby, with their son, they just remodeled and got into a house that they've spent some love and just to make it exactly what they wanted. And she's excited to have Christmas in her new home. And she's said that, you know, I just
it's really funny because she said to me, because I was trying to decide Thanksgiving one place, Christmas one place, so I could be with Dad and I could be with all the grands. And she said, Mom, we could just do Christmas a few days before you leave. Little, he won't know. And I thought, she's totally got the flex and flow thing down.
Yeah, totally. And I think, but that comes from Grandma giving you that space, and then you giving us that space. And then because you gave us that space, we give that space to each other as siblings. And I hope that carries down for them to be able to do in their own homes, because I think that's such a gift, because it turns the focus from being family and spending time together to getting your way and making people feel bad, when everyone has to do the thing God puts on their heart to do, and you have to give them space to do it. So I'm sorry if that strikes a bad chord with anybody, but, you know, families need to be able to put their immediate family first day together, where we get to celebrate it together.
And it's important to think of other people, like your parents or grandparents would love to see you. Doesn't mean it's on their terms or my terms, no.
Right.
But
right, keeping people in mind is always good, you know. And
because
knowing,
you go back to what's God call us to do, is to love others.
And to be in community,
right,
of believers.
Kind of make all your decisions out of the lens of love.
I love that. That's awesome. Is there anything else you can think of that you wanted to share about our family traditions? Or, I mean, I think you just gave kind of like mic drop wisdom right there, but
I think the most important thing is that you love your children, your grandchildren, your parents, your aunts and uncles, and have a lens to see if people are in need during the holidays. There's so many people who have nobody that love them, and just keep mindful of that. It doesn't mean you have to include them in everything you do, but bring them a gift, bring them a coffee, make some cookies.
Yeah. Do you know someone whose family moved out of town? Someone who's a widow?
Yeah.
Someone who maybe they lost a child, or maybe they lost a job and are really sad or don't have community around them. It's really good to be mindful of that.
Because you don't want anybody to be alone. My brothers are now all businessmen, but when I was younger, they were projectionists. And they said Christmas was one of the busiest days of the year, and people would come in alone, and they would just buy ticket after ticket and watch movie after movie, because it was better to be in a theater full of people doing something than being home alone on Christmas Day.
Wow.
So I've always, Christmas can get hectic, but don't let the hecticness take away from the beauty of what God wants this season to be.
I love that. And, and I think the world will always push you to feel like there's no time, and I talk about this all the time, and I will continue to talk about it. The hustle culture that tells you basically you get a badge of honor for how busy you are, but that really bring to God the things that you have to get done and the things you want to get done, and put it up to the lens of Scripture and what's important in life, because, you don't want to life is short, and you don't want to miss out on God's opportunity for you to love on people, to show his love to people, to spend time with family. Things, time goes by.
Right. And sometimes I think we put our agenda. A story my mom told me, I was with her, I was very young, and her best friend's daughter was not saved, and she wanted her to be saved so bad. So she went to the coffee shop, and she was sitting there, and she went with the intention to talk to this young girl and just to show her Jesus, and she knew she was going to get her saved, because it was so important to my mom. So she spent like an hour and a half just talking with her, and I can still remember her talking to her, and maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours into it, somebody tapped her on the shoulder, and she said, "Could you lead me to Jesus?" And my mom said, "I never even noticed anything around me because I was so intent of what I wanted to do." And God taught me at that moment.
I love that. That's a good.
Yeah, to make sure that you're seeing things through his lens and being vulnerable, your spirit being vulnerable to what's around you.
Because we don't decide.
Nope.
We don't decide. We just love and show people that love. Well, and talking about your own agenda, I remember one of the first Christmases where everybody had something to do. So all the kids were out of the house already. And so me and Kev had Christmas Day off, completely just us. And Kev remembered a friend of ours who's a bachelor, really good friend. And he said, "Oh, let's check in and see if he's doing anything. I just don't want him to be alone on Christmas." Well, I was like, "Oh, what a great idea, babe. That is so good. Yes. Yes." And then immediately I start dreaming up in my mind this wonderful morning breakfast. I'm going to make this big spread. We're going to have mimosas. We're going to sit around watching Christmas movies, enjoying each other's company all day. I'm already visualizing it, thinking of the meal, what I'm going to make. And Kev calls him and he goes, "Let's go on a hike." And he goes, he wants to hike to the Hollywood sign. I was like, "On Christmas? On my Christmas?"
Kev almost killed you.
Yeah. And Kev was like, "Yeah, babe, is there a reason we can't?" And I was like, "It's just, I wanted to be by my Christmas tree." And I kind of started to have a hard time with it. And the Lord was like, "Caroline, let's just your heart needs to be right, And it was hard. And I can't actually say that I can say that I did go on the hike, and I had a happy heart going into it, or I was trying to have a happy heart going into it, but I can't say that I was excited about the hike. But we did it, and it was fun. We had a good time. It was fun and funny. If you've ever hiked to the Hollywood sign, there's like the old Bat Cave where they used to film the old Batman. And I had done a costume show where I had a Batman like mask and a Joker mask. And so we brought them and we took pictures. Anyway, ended up being really funny. And then we got pizza and got some fun Christmassy beers and went back to our house and hung out, and I had Christmas music playing, and it was a beautiful day. It was a good day, but it was so funny because I loved the idea of, oh yeah, you guys do your thing for Christmas. That is so okay. Everyone should do. But once it affected how I had visualized it, and I knew the Lord wanted to work on my heart on that. And so now I look back at those pictures and it's a fun memory, and I think it's fine and great that we went on a hike, and I'm glad that the Lord chose to try and get my heart to be right and to point that out to me, because now I feel like it's helped me to continue to be more open for the holidays and traditions, and hanging on to traditions sometimes takes away the joy and the purpose for the season. Why Jesus is the reason for the season. And it's like, Grandma would have gone on a hike with him for Christmas. But this is why, like, when we grow up, we want to be Grandma Definitely. And I want to be my mom too. My mom has done the same thing my grandma did, where she just welcomes anybody in, and anybody knows that she is so welcoming. And even when I was growing up, my friends would always want to hang out with her.
I didn't
They'd
know that.
come over and they'd be like, does your mom want to come in and hang out with us? And I'd be like, we're having a slumber party and we're talking about boys. I know. Let's see what your mom thinks. I'm like, I love my mom, but I just wanted to hang out with my friends. Guess we're seeing a little, like, I don't know, you can see maybe got somewhere from the beginning. But anyway, and then that's why there's a movie about a mom who goes back to college with her daughter. And I laughed because she's a really fun, sweet mom. And all the college friends are like, can your mom come with us? And I laughed so hard. I was crying in the theater, and Kevin was like, everybody was looking at you. Because I was like, I totally know. That was my mom. That's exactly. Everyone wants to hang out with her. So point being, I hope that I have that same love when people
I will say
one
of our traditions has become Caroline makes sausage, biscuits, and gravy.
Oh, that's true.
Christmas
That is
morning.
a new tradition.
You've done it for probably 5-8 years. I don't know. And that's
Dakota
a yummy. That's a yummy tradition.
So it's the Bob Evans recipe. And I would say
maybe 10 years.
No, it's been over 10 years.
Over
for
10
sure.
years, yeah. They are yummy.
Dakota was still living at home. And so now, we do.
Isn't it funny how food can do that? Like it can bring a beautiful memory.
Just the flavor.
I don't
of it, the
ever
taste, the
eat
smell.
them any other time of the year. Only
Just
Christmas morning. And we have fruit and,
cinnamon rolls.
And cinnamon rolls and orange juice and mimosas now that all the children are old.
So when we do all get together, we still do the traditions that our family started. So we start with the nieces and nephews.
Or my youngest grandchild.
Yeah. Your grandchild, my niece I guess so. Now the youngest will be a niece.
I think I said
a nephew.
Is a boy.
So we start with them passing out the gifts and watching, and so now that is what we do all together. And it's and we did it last year in Tennessee with all of us, and all together we're
seven children, 5 grandkids, and Dad and I. And now we've added 2 more grandkids.
Yeah. So it's a lot, but it's really sweet, and I just love what we've done. All right. Well, I think we're gonna close. I think if you're listening, I hope that this encourages you to make traditions, but hold them loosely and know the intention of them, that it's not doing it exactly on the day, exactly the same way, but that
Or
it's
perfect.
or perfect, exactly. But that it's being together and celebrating Jesus and celebrating Christmas in the giving of gifts and the giving of our time. And especially in the middle of such a busy season, it's such a sweet thing when you can focus on that versus being so overwhelmed and not being present in the moment. And I think it's so much more important to be present in the day with your family than it is to hit a certain date or a certain time or a certain tradition specifically.
Yeah, I think, probably 20 years ago now, maybe 25, I don't know. A lot of years ago, I don't remember exactly. I was asked to do a Christmas retreat to massage at. And so I went. And every year, it was the first weekend of December, and we sang carols. People brought their Christmas cards. We heard messages, just beautiful messages on family traditions and Jesus and just everything. And it was very slow paced. And that's how I kind of began to slow down, because that was just such a good precursor to the season. Like, not to go into it, I have to buy this, I have to do that, I have to cook this, I have to see this person. But just like, okay, center my heart right with God and then start the season.
Well, and you get so much done that way. Like you said, we were always doing something, but it never felt rushed. It always felt easy. It didn't feel like
sometimes staying up till 2 watching Christmas movies and sleeping in. Just whatever, however it happened. Because a lot of times you couldn't buy Christmas movies, like especially when you were younger. I mean, VHS came out, but
not every VHS was available.
Right, not every movie was. So when Christmas movies came, you had to watch them when they played.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I'm going to end with the rapid fire questions. What is your favorite vacation place that you have been to, and why?
It's going to sound funny, but I think one of my top vacation places that I have loved is San Diego. Because being my dad was disabled, it was where I vacationed as a child, always. That's where we went to. And then when you moved out of the house, you worked in San Diego. So many of our summer vacations were in San Diego, visiting you.
Me and my husband did an acrobatic show at SeaWorld for 4 years called Cirque de la Mer. So it was in the water.
So we would go down there many times through the summer and stay a week or stay a weekend or whatever to see you, because I just wasn't quite ready for you to be completely gone yet.
Well, and I'm grateful because then I got to see my siblings too, you know, and I'm obviously very close to them.
Yes. So San Diego just has a lot of sweet memories for that reason.
That's sweet. I love that. What is your favorite scripture or life verse and why?
I have a few, but one would be Psalms 118:24. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. So I kind of think it embodies everything we've talked about. Like, what is today? God made today. We're going to be happy. We're going to enjoy it to its fullest. We're going to love people. And as a child growing up, every day of my life, my mom would say, Shauna, what's today? And I'd say, it's a day the Lord has made. What are you going to do? And I'd say, rejoice and be glad in it. And if I was mad about something, I'd be, it's a day the Lord has made. She goes, Shauna, what's today? And until I got my attitude in check, I'd have to repeat it. I'd open my lunch at school and she would have written it on the napkin. Literally every day. One of the last things she said to me before she died was that. So, and since she's passed away, whenever anything is kind of sketchy or hard in my life, that scripture comes up, like on the radio, or it's kind of sweet.
It's like a tool that God gave, that she gave you, that God had her give you. And then did you have a second verse that you wanted to do? Or?
Well, the whole passage of Psalms 139 is like just insane to me. That God knew me before he made the foundations of the earth, and that he cared about me, he loved me. That whole chapter.
I hemmed you in behind and before.
That, you know, before you were in your mother's womb. So
all the days were ordained for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love Ephesians 1:4. It's the one I tattooed on me. It's talking about I am chosen, for he chose me before the foundation of the earth. I think all that to me just speaks that God knows me. He knows you. God knows where we are. He cares about you. You're not alone. You're not invisible.
Yeah.
The God who made the whole world loves you.
I love that.
And
Okay, one more rapid fire question. Favorite TV show or movie? And I'm going to say you need to add in your favorite Christmas one since this is Christmas episode.
I think of my life, my favorite movie it's kind of an oldie. It's Ever After with Drew Barrymore, and it's kind of a Cinderella story. And there's a point where she's needing to be brave and walk in. And she stands up on the steps, and she's all made up. The fairy godmother made her. And she says, just breathe. And that's me. Like, sometimes I always feel like maybe I'm not adequate. I'm afraid if I'm going to walk in, you know, will I be liked? Am I wearing the right thing?
Nobody would ever guess that you struggle with that.
Yeah. So I just, in my mind, I always tell myself, just breathe. So that whole movie, it's a good movie, but I think because of that, and she's kind to the servants, and just her kindness is overwhelming in that movie.
Yeah.
My favorite Christmas movie is White Christmas.
I love White Christmas.
And I love, the kids and I watched it all the time growing up.
Well, and I always remember, because I was a ballerina, and there's that moment at the end where there's a little girl and she's on point shoes. And I remember watching it before I got on point, dreaming of the day I got to go on point. And then I remember the first Christmas that I had my point shoes, and then the part was coming, and I'm like, wait, pause, let me get my point shoes. I need to be on them for this moment, you know?
Yeah, I watched it with my mom. And then I watched it with my kids.
So
and Elf is always just fun and quotable, and you can't not watch it and not laugh. And I of course, love Santa Claus 3 because there's an elf in there that I just love.
I know. My brother was an extra in the Santa Claus 3 movie. And when I say he was an extra, he was an elf in the Santa Claus 3 movie, and a regular elf. So he was he worked on the movie for a couple of months.
Yeah,
5 months. And so every day he would go in, and he was little, under 10.
Yeah, I was going to say 8 or 9.
Yeah. And he would go in every day, go into makeup, get his ears put on, get his makeup put on, get his costume. And I remember he said one day, to you,
we were driving, because it's a drive to get there,
to get to where the studio was that they were filming it at, and he said, Mom, it just feels real.
It makes me want to think it's real, because the set was magic.
The minute you walked on set, it felt like, and we even went with him and were his guardians a few of the days, because obviously my mom
had a lot.
My mom had 2 other kids still at home, so we helped out with that a little bit, and it was always just so just so sweet. Yeah. But I even like the first Santa Claus movie.
I liked all of them. Yeah, the first and third are my favorites. I like that.
That's awesome. I just love that. Everything that's happy and good and sweet. And I think that really truly celebrates the life that Jesus came to save, is really enjoying all that and not getting legalistic about what's okay to celebrate and what's not.
Right.
So
I think that's a good for not just Christmas, but your whole life.
Yeah.
Like 9 was gracious. Like, I was such a young mom, I'd be like, no 2-piece bathing suits. Okay, we can do a 2-piece bathing suit. No dating, no talking to boys. Okay, you can talk to boys. Okay, we're courting again. No, we're not courting. And 9's like, okay, Mom, whatever you say. And I'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm just so young and I just don't want to mess it up.
Well, it's like you get influenced by people sometimes, and I think that's hard because you think, oh, wait, am I doing it wrong? And then God reminds your heart and goes, no, you don't need to do that. And you're like, oh, okay.
Well, and I think the biggest thing I wanted to impart was just, like, you have the heart of God. Like, do what we do hurt the heart of God? No. You know, we want to.
No other thing was more important in our family growing up was that, you know, just walking with God and his heart. And it was, you know.
Not a list of rules.
Not a list of rules, behaving perfectly, doing perfectly in school, you know, pursuing a career. None of that was important in light of the gospel.
There was still discipline and things like that. But
oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, I was disciplined, but for good reason. All right. So in closing, is there any resources that you want to share that you're loving right now, things that you're loving to do?
I'm doing a study by Jen Wilkin called Better on Study on Hebrews.
That's cool.
I think it's impacted me because she really points out that the author is speaking to Jews who are just getting acquainted with Jesus, and that some of the scriptures in Hebrews have always been kind of confusing to me, and they're becoming clear now. And she made an example of Judas, that he was exposed to Jesus. He was very exposed. He walked with him, but his heart never was given to Jesus. And a big thing to me is I want Jesus to always have my heart. I want God to have my heart. So Hebrews is coming alive in a different way through this study. For self-care, I've been trying to do a mask every month, trying to...
I've been eating
healthy. Yeah, I've been eating healthy and drinking more water, and I've taken a lot of things out of my diet that just didn't sit well with me. So I figure I
and she's
turned
still
60
having fun.
this year.
She's not being like,
oh no, I don't.
Yeah. But she's just being more mindful.
Trying to do that. I figure going into this next season of my life, I just want to be healthy. I want to be able to hike with my grandkids still, and
Yeah, like in the summer, she went out to Tennessee to visit my sister and her family, and my mom went tubing with my niece, and it was pretty incredible.
Because at that point, I had lost 35 pounds, and before I might have been self-conscious about getting in and out of the boat, and jumped in the lake, and she whispered, it was on her birthday that we did it, and she said, I'll never forget my 10th birthday because you went tubing with me. It just melted my heart.
That's so awesome.
I'm just
it's like good motivation.
Just working toward healthy. I figure my 60s will be the best years yet.
Amen. I love it. That's awesome. Today's December 10th, and we are just 15 days away from Christmas, 14 days from Christmas Eve. So I hope you still have a couple of weeks to slow it down a little bit and take some time and just consider your traditions. And I hope our traditions have encouraged you and our stories have made you laugh. And you'll realize that we don't all do it perfect, but with the Lord, He helps it to be a sweet time. Thank you, Mom, for being on this show. Girl. I loved having you on, and we have one more episode this season that'll be airing on December 17th, and that will be all about Jesus and His birth and why I celebrate it, and a little bit diving a little more into Christmas and celebrating Christmas. So I hope you will join us for that. The new season starts on January 7th. So I am excited to do season 2, and I'm excited for all the interviews that I have coming up. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mama.
Thank you, baby girl. I love you.
Okay, all you housewives, that's it for today. I'm truly grateful you joined us. If you know anyone who would be encouraged by this episode, you can easily share it by taking a screenshot and adding it to your stories or feed. You can also text it to a friend. New episodes are uploaded every other Friday. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch them all. You can find and interact with me on Facebook and Instagram at Married Rogers Neighborhood, as well as my website, which I linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed our conversation today, it helps so much if you could take a second to rate and give a 5-star review. It really makes a huge difference for me and the podcast. Just remember, we are in this together. God loves you, and you are not alone. See you next time.